The Galactic Concord had watched humanity for 300 years, and in all that time, they had never once considered the small blue planet a threat. Ambassador Kethra of the Yulani Dominion remembered the first time she had seen the reports about Earth, back when she was just a junior diplomat learning the ways of galactic politics. The images had shown primitive creatures killing each other with weapons made of metal and fire. Their cities filled with smoke and their oceans choked with waste. A species that cannot even unite their own world. Her mentor had told her, "We'll never reach the stars." That belief had guided the Concord's policy to war humanity for 3 centuries. And why would it not? The 12 species of the Concord had achieved interstellar travel only after unifying their home worlds, only after evolving past petty conflicts and tribal warfare. Humanity, with its endless wars and divisions, seemed destined to destroy itself long before it could ever threaten anyone else. Oh, they watched, and they waited. And they did nothing when the Vexury raiders began hunting near human space. The Vexury were a problem, of course, but they were a useful problem. They kept the outer rim territories unstable, which prevented any single species from growing too powerful, and they occasionally eliminated threats before those threats could become serious. When their raids began striking settlements in the Sol system's outer reaches, the Concord simply looked the other way after all. The humans were not members of the Concord, and their colonies were not protected by galactic law. If a few thousand primitives died in the darkness between stars, what did it matter to the grand design of interstellar civilization? Kethra had signed the document that officially classified human space as unprotected territory, and she had not lost a moment of sleep over it. That was before the silence began the first. Reports came from a trading post on the edge of Vexury territory, a station called Merchant's Rest that served as a neutral ground for pirates and smugglers. The station master had sent a routine transmission about unusual sensor readings, something large moving through the void without any identifiable energy signature. And then the transmission had simply stopped. The Concord's intelligence division dismissed it as equipment failure. Stations in the outer rim were notoriously unreliable, and there was nothing in that region worth investigating. Then the Vexury fleet vanished 60 warships, the largest raiding force the Vexury had assembled in decades, had been moving toward a wealthy colony in the Arcturus system. They were expected to arrive within 3 standard days, and the colony had already begun evacuation procedures. But the fleet never came. Search vessels found nothing, no debris, no escape pods, no distress beacons, no bodies. 60 ships carrying nearly 20,000 pirates had simply ceased to exist, as if they had never been there at all. A malfunction, suggested High Commander Zorath of the Kethvari hegemony during the Emergency Council session. Their ships were old and poorly maintained. Perhaps they suffered a cascade failure in their hyperspace drives. All 60 ships? Kethra had asked, her bioluminescent frills flickering with doubt. At the same time? Zorath had no answer for that. The sightings began 3 days later. A cargo hauler traveling through the Orion Arm reported seeing a ship unlike anything in the Concord's databases. The captain described it as massive and angular, painted in colors so dark it seemed to absorb the light of nearby stars. It had no visible weapons, no engine signatures, no identifying marks of any kind. It had simply drifted past their vessel like a shadow given form, and then it was gone within a week. Similar reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The mysterious ship had been seen near mining operations, space stations, and colony worlds. It never responded to hails, never showed any sign of aggression, and never appeared on sensors until it was already visible to the naked eye. It moved through the Concord's territory like a ghost, and no one could explain how or why. "We must identify this vessel," declared the Melodari Overmind during another emergency session, its harmonic voice resonating through the Chamber of Unity. If a new power has entered our space, we must know their intentions. The Concorde dispatched its finest intelligence vessels, ships equipped with the most advanced sensors in the galaxy, crewed by operatives trained to uncover any secret. They spread across the affected regions, scanning, probing, searching for any trace of the phantom ship. They found nothing, or rather, they found something impossible. Empty space where the sightings had occurred, with no residual energy signatures, no gravitational disturbances, no evidence that any ship had ever been there. It was as if the vessel existed outside the normal laws of physics, appearing and disappearing at will without leaving any trace. This is not natural, Cathra told the council, her voice trembling despite her efforts to remain calm. Whatever this thing is, it should not exist. Perhaps it does not, suggested the crystalline representative of the Silicari Collective. Perhaps these sightings are a hoax, a coordinated effort to spread fear and destabilize our alliance. That theory was disproven when the Katvari patrol fleet encountered the ship. Directly High Commander Zorath had sent 12 of his finest warships to investigate the latest sighting near a dead star in the void reaches. His crews were veterans of a dozen campaigns. His ships were armed with weapons capable of cracking planets, and his confidence was absolute. Nothing in the galaxy could stand against Katvari military might. Transmission from his fleet commander arrived 6 hours after they entered the void reaches. "We have visual contact," the commander reported, her voice tight with an emotion that sounded almost like fear. "The target is approximately 3 kilometers in length. No visible weapon systems, no energy readings of any kind. It appears to be." The transmission dissolved into static when the Concorde's rescue ships arrived. They found the 12 Katvari warships drifting dead in space. Their weapons were unfired, their shields were intact, and their crews were alive but unconscious. Every single system on every single ship had been shut down simultaneously, with no explanation and no damage. The crews remembered nothing. The last thing any of them could recall was seeing the dark ship grow larger in their viewports, and then waking up in the rescue vessels. "They could have destroyed us," one officer whispered during his debriefing. "They had us completely helpless, and they just turned off our ships and left." Why would they do that? No one had an answer. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for the Phantom to strike again, waiting to learn what this impossible vessel wanted. They did not have to wait long. Rear Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus and watched the stars drift past the observation windows, each point of light representing a world that had dismissed her species as primitive, violent, and unworthy of respect. She was 63 years old, with gray streaking her dark hair and lines carved deep into her face by decades of service. But her eyes were sharp and clear, filled with a quiet determination that her crew had learned to recognize as the calm before a storm. "Admiral," said Commander Chun from the tactical station, his voice barely above a whisper, even though there was no one to overhear them. "The Katvari patrol fleet has been neutralized. All 12 vessels are disabled and drifting. No casualties on either side." Vasquez nodded slowly, never taking her eyes from the stars. "Good work," she said. "Take us deeper into the void reaches. We have more hunting to do." The Prometheus moved without a sound, its massive hull sliding through the darkness like a predator stalking prey. At 3 kilometers long, it was larger than most space stations, yet it produced no energy signature, reflected no light, and appeared on no sensors. To the rest of the galaxy, it was a ghost, an impossibility, a nightmare given form to Elena Vasquez. It was just as she had been 12 years old when the Vexry first struck human territory, raiding a mining station in the asteroid belt and killing everyone aboard. The Concorde had done nothing, had not even acknowledged that the attack had occurred. Humans were not members of their alliance, and human lives meant nothing to them. That same year, A crashed alien scout ship had been recovered from the ocean floor near the Mariana Trench. And everything had changed. The ship was small, barely larger than a commercial aircraft. But its technology was centuries ahead of anything humanity had ever created. Its hull was made of materials that Earth scientists could not identify. Its computers operated on principles that defied conventional physics. And its engines could bend space itself. The world's governments had come together in secret, setting aside their differences for the first time in history, united by a common purpose: survival. They created Project Prometheus, a hidden initiative dedicated to understanding alien technology and preparing humanity for the day when they would finally face the stars for 300 years. They worked in the shadows. They built secret shipyards in the hollowed-out cores of asteroids, hidden from the alien telescopes that watched Earth so carefully. They developed phase cloak technology that could bend light and sensor waves around a ship, making it invisible to any known detection method. They created weapons that could accelerate tungsten rods to a third of the speed of light, turning simple metal into planet-killing projectiles. They built an artificial intelligence network capable of processing information faster than any organic mind, predicting enemy movements before they happened. And they waited. Elena had joined Project Prometheus at 18, following in the footsteps of her mother and grandmother before her. 3 generations of Vasquez women had dedicated their lives to this cause, and Elena had risen through the ranks to become the admiral of humanity's first true warship. The Prometheus was her command, her responsibility, and her burden. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Park from the communications station, "we are receiving a transmission from Earth Command. Priority 1. Vasquez turned from the windows, her expression hardening. "Priority 1 meant only one thing. Put it through," she ordered. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the weathered face of General Marcus Webb, the commander of Earth's unified military forces. He was an old man, older even than Vasquez, and his eyes were heavy with the weight of secrets that most humans would never know. "Elena," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion, "we have confirmed intelligence about the next Vexery target." "Where?" Vasquez asked. "Colony 7, Webb replied, and something in his voice made Elena's blood run cold. "Our settlement on Europa. They are going to hit it in 6 days." Colony 7 was home to 47,000 people, families who had volunteered to live on the frozen moon, believing they were pioneers building a new future for humanity. They had no idea that they were bait, that their colony existed partly to draw alien attention away from Earth's true capabilities. "We can reach them in 4 days," Vasquez said immediately. "We can intercept the Vexery fleet before they—" "No," Webb interrupted, and the word fell like a hammer. "We cannot reveal ourselves, not yet. The Concord is watching too closely. If they discover what we have built, they will unite against us before we are ready." Vasquez felt her hands clench into fists at her sides. "You are asking me to let 47,000 people die. I am asking you to think of the 8 billion people on Earth," Webb replied, his voice cracking with emotion he could not quite hide. "I am asking you to think of every human who will ever live. We have one chance at this, Elena. One chance to show the galaxy what we are. If we act too soon, we lose everything." The transmission ended, leaving Vasquez alone with her thoughts and her crew for 3 days. She did nothing, following orders, keeping the Prometheus hidden while the Vexery fleet moved closer and closer to Colony 7. She told herself it was necessary, told herself the sacrifice would mean something, told herself that this was war and war demanded hard choices. On the 4th day, she received word that Colony 7 had been destroyed. The Vexery had used nuclear weapons, turning the colony into a crater of molten ice and radioactive ash. 47,000 men, women, and children gone in an instant. Elena Vasquez wept that night, alone in her quarters. Mourning people she had been ordered not to save when morning came. She dried her tears and walked onto the bridge with steel in her spine and fire in her eyes. "Lieutenant Park," she said calmly. "Open a channel to Earth Command, Admiral." Park asked, confusion evident in her voice. "I am done waiting," Vasquez replied. "I am done hiding." The HFY hegemony sold weapons to the Vexery. They provided the ships and the nuclear warheads that killed our people. It is time they learned that humanity remembers. And humanity does not forgive. She stood at the center of the bridge, surrounded by crew members who had trained their entire lives for this moment, who had inherited a mission from their parents and grandparents, who had never known a world where humanity was not preparing for war. "Set course for HFY space," she ordered. "Maximum speed." It is time the galaxy learned that there is something in the darkness to be afraid of. The Prometheus turned toward enemy territory, carrying 300 years of rage and 300 years of preparation. The hunt had begun. High Commander Zorath of the HFY hegemony had never known fear in his entire life. He was a warrior born of warriors, raised from birth to command fleets and conquer worlds. And his name was spoken with terror across a dozen star systems. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the unbreakable truth, watching his tactical display with the calm confidence of a predator surveying his domain. 12 dreadnoughts surrounded him, each one the size of a small moon, each one carrying enough firepower to reduce a planet to rubble. The HFY were the masters of war in this region of space. And Zorath was the master of the HFY. No force in the galaxy could challenge his fleet, no weapon could pierce his shields, and no enemy had ever survived an engagement with him. "High Commander," said his tactical officer, a young warrior eager to prove himself. "We have received reports of the Phantom ship entering our territory." Zorath allowed himself a small smile. The mysterious vessel had been causing chaos throughout the Concord, disabling ships and vanishing without a trace, and the other species were terrified of it. But Zorath was not like them. Where they saw a threat, he saw an opportunity. "If this Phantom is real," he said to his bridge crew, "then it has made a fatal mistake by entering HFY space. We will find it, we will capture it, and we will learn its secrets. Imagine the power we will gain when we possess technology that can make ships invisible." His officers nodded eagerly, their eyes bright with greed and ambition. The HFY valued strength above all else, and the one who captured this mysterious vessel would be celebrated as a hero for generations. "Spread the fleet into search formation," Zorath ordered. "Scan every sector, every asteroid field, every patch of empty space. This Phantom cannot hide from us forever." The 12 dreadnoughts moved apart, their sensors sweeping across the void, searching for any sign of their quarry. Hours passed, then days, and they found nothing. The Phantom remained invisible, untouchable. A ghost that refused to be caught. Zorath's confidence began to waver, though he would never admit it to his crew. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones, a sense of being watched, of being hunted rather than hunting. On the third day, his tactical officer spoke again, and this time his voice was trembling. "High Commander, we have detected incoming projectiles. Bearing 047. Speed." The officer paused, his face going pale. "Speed is approximately 30% of light speed." "Impossible," Zorath said automatically. "Nothing can accelerate projectiles to that velocity. Our shields can handle anything that—" The first impact cut off his words. The dreadnought Eternal Fury, positioned on the fleet's port flank, simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a massive vessel carrying 5,000 warriors, and the next it was an expanding cloud of debris and fire. The tungsten rod that struck it was traveling so fast that the ship's shields did not even register the impact before they were overwhelmed. Evasive maneuvers. Zorath screamed, his composure shattered. All ships, evasive maneuvers. The second rod struck the Pride of Conquest, punching through its armored hull like a needle through cloth. The ship broke apart in a cascade of explosions, its reactor going critical and consuming everything within 1,000 kilometers. Earth's tactical display was chaos. Warnings flashed across every screen. Damage reports flooded in from every ship. And his officers shouted conflicting orders as they tried to respond to an attack they could not see or understand. "Where is the enemy?" Zorath demanded. "Show me where these shots are coming from." "We cannot detect anything," his tactical officer replied, his voice breaking with panic. "There is nothing on our sensors. The projectiles are appearing from empty space." A third dreadnought died, then a fourth. The invisible enemy was picking them off one by one, and there was nothing Zorath could do to stop it. Then the Phantom appeared, to cloak directly in front of the unbreakable truth. And Zorath finally saw what had been hunting them. It was massive and angular, painted in colors so dark it seemed to drink the light of the stars. And on its hull was a symbol he did not recognize, a blue and green sphere surrounded by a wreath of leaves, with words written in an unknown script for exactly 4.7 seconds. The Phantom was visible, and in those seconds, Itferegereth watched in horror as beams of focused energy lanced out from the dark ship, striking 3 more of his dreadnoughts with surgical precision. The beams did not destroy the ships. Instead, they targeted specific systems, disabling weapons, shields, and engines with impossible accuracy. Then the Phantom vanished again, fading into the void as if it had never existed. "High Commander," his communications officer shouted. The enemy vessel broadcast a message before it disappeared. "Play it," Zorath ordered, his voice hollow with shock. The bridge speakers crackled to life, and a voice spoke in a language that the ship's translation system struggled to process. It was harsh and strange, filled with sounds that no Kethvari throat could produce. But the meaning was clear enough, from Earth for humanity. "You armed the ones who killed our children. Now you will answer for it." Zorath felt something he had never experienced before. True, absolute terror. "Retreat," he whispered, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. "All ships, retreat. Maximum speed. Get us out of here." The surviving vessels of his once mighty fleet fled into hyperspace, leaving behind the burning wreckage of 8 dreadnoughts and the bodies of 40,000 warriors as they ran. Zorath transmitted a warning on every frequency he could reach, broadcasting to every ship, every station, every world in the galaxy. "Unknown hostile. Unknown hostile. It does not show on sensors. It strikes without warning. It does not die. It does not die." The message spread across the stars at the speed of light, carried by relay stations and hyperspace buoys to every corner of the galactic concord in the Chamber of Unity. Ambassador Kethra listened to Zorath's desperate transmission and felt her blood turn to ice. The Phantom ship was not some natural phenomenon or alien explorer. It was a weapon, and someone was using it to wage war. "Contact every intelligence asset we have," she ordered her staff. "I want to know what that symbol means. I want to know what language that message was in. I want to know who these attackers are and what they want." The answer came back within hours, and when Kethra read it, she had to sit down before her legs gave out beneath her. The symbol was called a planet. The blue and green sphere represented a world covered in water and life. The language was called English, one of thousands spoken by a single species. The attackers were human. The primitives had come for them at last. The Chamber of Unity had stood for 10,000 years, a monument to the power and wisdom of the galactic concord. Its walls were carved from the core of a neutron star. Its floors were paved with crystals that sang when walked upon, and its ceiling displayed a real-time map of every inhabited world in known space in all that time. Emergency sessions had been called only 7 times for wars that threatened extinction, for plagues that crossed between species, for cosmic events that endangered entire star systems. This was the 8th representatives of the 12 species filled the chamber. Their forms as varied as the worlds they came from. The Yulani were tall and elegant, their skin glowing with bioluminescent patterns that shifted with their emotions. The Kethvari were massive and armored, built for war and conquest. The Melodari existed as clouds of harmonic energy, their voices resonating through the air like music. The Silicari were crystalline beings that communicated through light and vibration. All of them were afraid. Ambassador Kethra stood at the central podium, her frills flickering with colors that betrayed her inner turmoil. Around her, holographic displays showed images of the Phantom Ship, recordings of Zorath's desperate transmission, and data files about the species called humanity. 300 years, she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. For 300 years we watched them. We studied their wars, their divisions, their primitive struggles for resources and territory. We dismissed them as savages who would never achieve interstellar travel. She paused, letting her words sink in. We were wrong. The chamber erupted in noise shouts of disbelief from the Kethvari, harmonic protests from the Melodari, rapid light pulses from the Silicari. Everyone was talking at once, demanding explanations, demanding solutions, demanding someone to blame. Silence. Kethra commanded, and the authority in her voice cut through the chaos. This is not the time for panic. This is the time for understanding. We must learn everything we can about these humans and their capabilities. What is there to learn? Demanded High Commander Zorath, who had insisted on attending despite his humiliating defeat. They are primitives with stolen technology. We should gather our fleets and crush them before they can threaten us further. Your fleet was the largest in this region of space, Kethra replied coldly, and a single human ship destroyed 2/3 of it in less than 15 minutes. Do you truly believe more ships will solve this problem? Zorath fell silent, his scales flushing with shame and rage. The Melodari overmind drifted forward, its energy form pulsing with concern. We must sue for peace, it said, its harmonic voice trembling. Whatever grievances these humans have against us, surely they can be addressed through diplomacy. We have resolved conflicts before through negotiation. Negotiation requires both parties to want peace, said the Silicari representative, its crystalline body refracting light into complex patterns. These humans have not asked for anything. They have not made demands. They have simply attacked. Perhaps they do not want negotiation. Perhaps they want revenge. The word hung in the air like a curse. Revenge for what? Asked a younger Yulani delegate, her frills pale with confusion. What have we done to them? Kethra hesitated, then gestured to activate a new holographic display. Images appeared showing a frozen moon orbiting a gas giant, its surface scarred by impact craters and radiation burns. This is what the humans called Colony 7, she said quietly. A settlement on a moon in their home system, housing approximately 47,000 individuals. 6 weeks ago, it was destroyed by Vexari raiders using nuclear weapons supplied by the Kethvari hegemony. She turned to face Zorath directly. Your people armed ones who killed their children. Now they have come to collect the debt. Before Zorath could respond, the chamber's lights flickered. Every screen, every holographic display, every communication device was suddenly overridden by a single transmission. A human face appeared, a woman with gray-streaked hair and eyes that burned with cold fury. She wore a uniform of dark blue and gray, and behind her was the bridge of a ship filled with humans working at advanced consoles. My name is Rear Admiral Elena Vasquez of the United Earthship Prometheus, she said, her voice calm and measured despite the anger visible in her expression. I am speaking to the Galactic Concord on behalf of humanity." The chamber fell absolutely silent. Even the Melodari stopped their harmonic murmuring. "For 300 years, you watched us," Vasquez continued. "You cataloged our wars and our failures. You called us primitive, violent, unworthy of respect. You let raiders burn our colonies because we did not matter to you. You classified our space as unprotected territory and turned away while our people died." She leaned forward, her image growing larger on every display. "We heard every dismissal. We intercepted every report. We decoded every transmission you sent about us. And while you watched and judged, we built. In silence, in shadow, in the spaces you never thought to look." Admiral Vasquez straightened, her voice taking on the tone of a formal declaration. "The Prometheus is one ship. We have 12 more, and we are building more every day. You have a choice. Recognize humanity as equals. Grant us full membership in the Galactic Concord, and answer for the crimes committed against our people, or discover what 300 years of preparing for this moment truly means." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the assembled representatives. "You have 30 standard days to respond. If we do not receive a satisfactory answer, we will assume you have chosen war. And I promise you, you do not want to see what humanity looks like when we stop holding back." The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Then everyone began talking at once. "This is an outrage," Zorth shouted. "We cannot bow to threats from primitives." "They destroyed your fleet," Kethra reminded him sharply. "They have technology we cannot detect, weapons we cannot defend against, and ships we cannot find. This is not a threat. It is a statement of fact. What do they want?" asked the Melodari Overmind. She mentioned crimes committed against their people. "Perhaps if we address those grievances, we can avoid further conflict." "She wants blood," Zorth growled. "Can you not see it in her eyes? They are savages seeking revenge, nothing more." Kethra looked at the frozen image of Admiral Vasquez still displayed on the chamber's central screen, the tired eyes, the gray hair, the weight of centuries of patience finally reaching its end. "No," she said softly. "She does not want blood. If she wanted blood, she would have killed your crews instead of simply disabling their ships. She would have attacked our worlds instead of only striking military targets." The ambassador turned to face the council, her frills glowing with a complex pattern that indicated deep thought. "She wants what any sentient being wants: recognition, respect, and justice for her people. The question is whether we are wise enough to give it to her or foolish enough to make her take it by force." The chamber fell silent once more, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the Galactic Concord did not know what to do. 6 months had passed since Admiral Vasquez delivered her ultimatum to the Galactic Concord, and in that time, the universe had changed more than it had in the previous 10,000 years. The Treaty of Sol was signed in orbit above Earth, on a space station that humanity had built in secret and revealed to the galaxy only after negotiations began. It was called Unity Station, a name chosen deliberately to remind the Concord that humans were capable of working together when they needed. To Ambassador Kethra had been chosen to lead the delegation, partly because she was the most experienced diplomat in the Concord, and partly because she had been the first to argue for peace rather than war. She had spent weeks traveling to Earth, preparing herself for the moment when she would finally meet the species her people had. Dismissed for 3 centuries, nothing could have prepared her for what she found Earth was. Beautiful, a blue and green jewel hanging in the darkness of space, swirling with white clouds and teeming with life. From orbit, it looked fragile and precious, and Kethra understood for the first time why humans had fought so hard to protect it. The station was crowded with delegates from all 12 species. each one trying to hide their nervousness behind masks of diplomatic composure. They had come expecting to negotiate with primitives, but the technology surrounding them told a different story. The station's artificial gravity was smoother than anything the Concorde could produce. Its life support systems were more efficient, and its defensive capabilities were carefully hidden. But clearly formidable Admiral Vasquez met them in the main conference chamber, dressed in the same dark uniform she had worn during her transmission. Up close, she looked older and more tired than her image had suggested. But there was a strength in her eyes that commanded respect. "Welcome to Earth space," she said simply. "Let us begin." The negotiations lasted 3 weeks, and they were the most difficult 3 weeks of Kethra's career. The humans wanted full membership in the Concorde, complete with voting rights and territorial protections. They wanted reparations for the colonies that had been destroyed while the Concorde looked away. They wanted the Kethvari officials, who had supplied weapons to the Vexery, to stand trial for their crimes. The Concorde resisted at first, arguing that such demands were unreasonable, that humanity had not earned its place among the stars, that tradition must be respected. But every time they pushed back, Vasquez would simply smile and remind them of the 12 ships waiting in the darkness, invisible and unstoppable in the end. The Concorde agreed to everything. The signing ceremony took place in the station's observation deck, with Earth visible through the transparent walls like a promise of things to come. Representatives from all 12 species stood alongside human delegates, their signatures binding their civilizations to a new era of cooperation when it was over. Kethra found herself standing alone with Vasquez, watching the planet turn slowly below them. "You could have destroyed us," Kethra said quietly. "You had the power. Your ships are invisible, your weapons are unstoppable, and we had no way to defend ourselves. Why did you not simply conquer us?" Vasquez was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on Earth's blue oceans and green continents. "Because we remember what it was like to be alone in the dark," she finally said. "We remember the fear of not knowing what was watching us, the helplessness of being unable to protect ourselves. We spent 300 years building weapons because we were afraid." She turned to face Kethra, and for the first time, the ambassador saw something other than anger in her eyes. She saw sadness and hope, and a desperate longing for something better. "We did not want to become the monsters we feared," Vasquez continued. "We did not want to prove that your people were right about us, that we were nothing but violent savages who would destroy anything we could not control. We wanted to show you that humanity is better than that." She gestured toward the observation windows, where ships bearing the flags of a dozen species were beginning to arrive, trading vessels and diplomatic shuttles, science ships and passenger liners, all of them drawn to Earth by curiosity and wonder. "We do not want your fear," Vasquez said firmly. "We want your respect. We want a seat at the table. We want the galaxy to know that humanity is not a footnote in someone else's history. We are the authors of our own." Kethra felt something shift inside her, a change in perspective that she knew would stay with her for the rest of her life. She had spent her career studying aliens, trying to understand beings who thought and felt differently than her own people. But she had never truly understood until this moment humanity was not primitive. They were patient. They were not violent. They were protective. They were not unworthy of respect. They had simply never been given the chance to prove their worth. "I owe you an apology," Kethra said softly. "I signed a document that classified your space as unprotected territory. I allowed raiders to attack your people because I believed you did not matter. I was wrong, and I'm sorry." Vasquez nodded slowly, accepting the words without comment. "We all make mistakes," she said. "What matters is what we do next." Below them, Earth continued to turn, and somewhere on its surface, children were playing in parks and schools, looking up at a sky that was no longer empty. They did not know about the centuries of fear, The secret shipyards hidden in asteroids, the battles fought in silence and shadow. They only knew what their parents told them, that humanity had finally taken its place among the stars, and that the future was brighter than anyone had dared to dream in the years that followed. Humanity would become one of the most influential members of the Galactic Concord, bringing innovation and creativity to a civilization that had grown stagnant with age. Human scientists would solve problems that had baffled alien researchers for millennia. Human artists would create works that moved beings across the galaxy to tears. Human diplomats would broker peace between species that had been at war for thousands of years, and through it all, the 12 ships of the Prometheus fleet would remain, silent guardians watching over their people. A reminder to the galaxy that humanity would never again be underestimated. Admiral Elena Vasquez retired 5 years after the Treaty of Seoul was signed, returning to Earth to live out her remaining days in peace. She died at the age of 78, surrounded by family and friends, and was buried in a small cemetery overlooking the ocean. Her gravestone bore a simple inscription, the same words that had been written on the hull of her ship, the words that had announced humanity's arrival to a galaxy that had never expected them, from Earth, for humanity, and below that, in smaller letters, a final message from a woman who had carried the hopes of her entire species on her shoulders. They watched us crawl. They watched us soar. Now they watch us lead. The galaxy would never be the same.